if it's true, and based on other things he said, I believe the article is true, I'd ask you all the rhetorical question. How do you feel? How would you feel if you had a kid in Afghanistan right now? How would you feel if you lost a son, daughter, husband, wife? How would you feel, for real? I know that's not your job to express that feeling, but you know. You know in your heart, you know in your gut. It's deplorable. It's deplorable. As I've said many times, I'll say again, these folks are the backbone of America. They're the heart, the soul, the grit. That's what patriotism is about. I've just never been as disappointed in my whole career with a leader that I've worked with, president or otherwise, that if the article is true, and it appears to be based on other things he said, it is absolutely damnable. It is a disgrace.
Sesky, on a somewhat related topic, what would you say to the supporters of the QAnon, the people who believe in that conspiracy, what they think is true about America, that there's sex trafficking and a conspiracy against President Trump, and what would you say to President Trump for not rejecting that conspiracy and the people who believe in it?
I've been a big supporter of mental health. I'd recommend the people who believe it maybe should take advantage while it still exists in the Affordable Care Act. It's bizarre, totally bizarre. And now, have you guys found that plane load of people in uniforms and weapons and flying around? I mean, you know, have you found them yet? Is anybody even from, and by the way, I respect conservative and liberal points of view in the press. Anybody found that plane? What in God's name are we doing? Look at how it makes us look around the world. It's mortifying. It's embarrassing, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. If the president doesn't know better, which he has to know better, then my Lord, we're in much more trouble than I ever thought we were. It's bizarre. And, you know, this is a case where, you know, I've been surprised, pleased but surprised, with folks I've had political arguments with, like the former governor of Michigan, coming out and endorsing me. All the Republicans are endorsing me. They're reached where I am. That this can't go on. I mean, this cannot go on. It's a deconstruction of a democratic system. They know it. So I just, I'll conclude with what you heard me say many times before. The words of a president matter, even a lousy president. It gives succor, it gives encouragement to people who are spouting irrational views that no one has even close to ever presuming or showing ever existed. And it's done for a simple reason. From the very beginning, he's understood the only way he could win the first time and can win this time is he fundamentally divides the nation. Puts the nation, divides us so we're at each other's throats. That's not who we are. That's not who we are.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Last night, President Trump mocked you for wearing a mask and said that this is a sign that you must have some, quote, big issues. He says this even though he knows that, according to scientists and public health officials, wearing masks saves lives. I wonder if you worry that this kind of language that comes from the President of the United States could deter some Americans who are tuning into him to not wear masks.
Well, I wear it for reasons it's a big issue. I'm a smart fella. I listen to scientists. This is not a game. Life and death. Life and death. The reports that we're going to have, maybe there's some reports say another 100,000 dead, as many as 100,000 dead, more by the end of the year. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I just, anyway, it's hard to respond to something so idiotic.
Okay. Before my second question, just quickly, have you been tested now for COVID-19?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
I've been tested once with the deep test, and I'm going to continue to be testing on a regular basis.
Could I just ask quickly about Attorney General William Barr saying on CNN this week, he said that his assessment right now is that China poses the most aggressive threat to U.S. elections, even more than Iran or Russia. Do you believe him? Is that also your understanding based on the intelligence briefings that you have received?
No, it's not consistent with the briefings I've received, and he's a lousy enough attorney general, but he's a really bad intelligence officer.
It's not consistent because you believe?
Because I believe what I've been told. And you all know it. I mean, look, it's, you even have outfits like Facebook taking some, look, it's just, there are a lot of countries around the world I think would be happy to see our elections destabilized. But the one who's working the hardest, most consistently, and never has let up is Russia. And again, it's unfair to say to you guys, but ask yourself the rhetorical question. What is he so afraid of Vladimir Putin about? I mean, what's the problem? I mean, nothing. Nothing. It's almost obsequious. I mean, anyway, I just want to make it clear. I believe any country that engages in any activity to delegitimize or impact on American elections is a direct violation of our sovereignty. And if I'm President of the United States, there will be a response.
Thank you.
Sir, it's been a couple of weeks now since you announced Senator Harris as your running mate, and we haven't seen her out very much, including yesterday in Kenosha. Why is that, and what role do you see her playing in the final 2 months?
She's been on the road. She's out herself. The role is that, just like when Barack and I campaigned, we tried to cover as much territory as we could, and both of us out campaigning. She is an incredibly competent candidate. She is doing a great job. There will be times when we're together, but there's a lot of territory to cover. I talk with her almost every day. I speak with her. We work together, and I have great confidence in her. There's nothing about not campaigning together. It's about being able to cover more territory.
And just as a second question, do you know when you will have another COVID test? Do you have any plan, any future testing coming up?
Well, what they're doing is they're going to do it on a regular basis because everyone on my service detail and people who come into the house with me, they're all tested. So I just, yes, sir, show up and put my head back, when they tell me.
You don't know when it'll be, the next one?
Pardon me?
You don't know when the next one will be?
I imagine it'll be sometime this week. I just don't know. But it'll be a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you about another thing the president said last night. He once again suggested to his supporters that they should consider voting twice if they're in one of those states that can allow you to request an absentee ballot, say, fill that out, and then go try voting again in person. State officials have said it's a felony in some cases. Just curious what you make of it.
It is. It is a felony. You're a felony here in the state of Delaware. Look, I mean, how many times does this president have to suggest things and say things where you all don't just write, he's a fraud? Not an opinion. He wanted to, maybe we should delay the election. Maybe we should, you know, write-in ballots are fraudulent, not a single bit of evidence. This, I mean, it just is, and I think it's all designed to create so much chaos that no matter what the outcome of the election is, that it's thrown up in the air. I mean, that must be his reason, because, I mean, he says and does things that no other president that I'm aware of in American history has ever done. And we all go, well, there's another ridiculous, illegal, inappropriate thing he said, but we said so many of them, it doesn't matter. I mean, it just undermines the legitimacy of our democratic process, and it's dangerous.
You said today is the angriest you've been as a presidential candidate, but you said you're trying to restrain yourself. There are a lot of people out there who are supporting you or are inclined to not vote for the president who would say, why isn't Joe Biden angrier about all of this?
Because presidents of the United States should be presidential and should lead by example, as well as make clear exactly where they stand. Getting down in the gutter like the president does, saying things that I'd be inclined, if we were behind a barn somewhere, would be a different thing. But that's not the job of a president. The job of a president is to set an example. My anger is real because I must tell you, I carry, and I deliberately didn't bring with me today, Delaware National Guard had a pin made up. That's a gold star that was made up for my son, Bo, who didn't die in the field. And I always carry it with me. And I didn't carry it today because I was worried that if I focused too much on it, that I would engage in some of the kind of language the president has used. I mean, but I just think it is sick. It is deplorable. It is so un-American. It is so unpatriotic. And then watching him this morning, while I was shaving and the TV on, talking about he never said anything like that. He honored John McCain. He's the reason why flags were flown at half-mast. Oh, wasn't that noble of him? He's the same guy that when the ship went into harbor, he made sure the USS McCain was covered. You couldn't see it. He's the same guy that denigrated John. He's the same guy who did a similar thing the way he talked about George H.W. Bush, who was shot down in the Pacific. I mean, but he just stands there. It's almost pathological. I've never said anything like that. No one's been better to the military. I've just got to focus on what has to be done, not what he did, what I do from here, what gets done from here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. If I could follow up on Ed's question about voting. We know the president has been attacking mail-in voting. He's even now suggesting his supporters vote twice. We also know that Russia has been trying to sow doubt about this system. Are you concerned at all that this messaging may be working, that your supporters may give up on voting by mail because they're concerned that it may be rigged?
Yes, I am. That's why I try not to talk about it so much. Because we're playing, the more we talk about, there's two things he wants us to talk about. is the election legitimate? And the whole country's up in flames. Everything's burning. Law and order. Because he doesn't want to talk about anything at all about the job he hasn't done. And so it's a conundrum. There's a lot we could talk about in terms of the specifics that Russia is doing and not doing. But when you do, all it does is undermine what people think may be the legitimate. What I don't want to have happen, I don't want people reaching the point where you could understand sometimes it's not worth voting. You know, it seems to me that one of the things that I keep trying to say to people is go to iwillvote.com. Figure out iwillvote.com and figure out where you can vote, how you can vote, what's available to you, where you can vote early, where you can vote in person, where it's going to be safe for you, etc. Plan now. Plan now. But the more chaos that is sown here, it's going to disincline people to show up. And in a sense, every time I speak about it, I feel like I'm playing at his game. I mean, is that, not do you agree with me, but does it make sense what I'm saying? That's what I'm, so I think that's all part of the deal.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Going back to the jobless report from this morning, you had acknowledged that less than half of the 22 million jobs that were lost this spring because of the pandemic have been recovered. What do you think the 1.4 million added back in August says about just the general direction of the economy?
I think any job added back is positive. I think it matters to the people who got that job back. You know, maybe you all were raised in households like I was, where the mom or dad was losing a job because of the economy, what's going on in your community. You could feel the tension, unease in the household, how it just everything, you know, worrying about whether you can provide for your family. And along the way, also look at the people who you've got, you know, a couple million people out there, close to, who are part-time workers who still can't make it, but are listed as employed. And a lot of them also are in the process of wondering whether or not, I mean, there are a lot of people lined up in food lines. They're the people, many of them, who have lost their health care, their health care provided by their employer. They're the same people who are out there worrying, if this president is able to win in court and wipe out the entire Affordable Care Act and all the 100 million people with pre-existing conditions won't be able to get insurance even if they had the money. And I mean, it's just the anxiety is enormous, is enormous. And look, again, I'm not being solicitous. Among the brightest people I've dealt with my whole career have been the press. Not a joke. You're all extremely well educated, you're well read, you have significant backgrounds, and the vast majority have tried to report the news, not just opinion. But I can't believe that you don't feel the same, not Democrat, Republican, okay? You don't feel the same anxiety because you got a brother or a sister, a mother, a father, a son or a daughter who's going through what you're not, what we're not. We have jobs. Well, I don't have a job now, but we have jobs. And so it's a real concern. And I just think that this has moved beyond Democrat, Republican. I think it's moved to trying to put this country back together again so we can move.
Take one from the box. You like to engage.
I like to
President,
engage.
if I may ask, President Trump has just announced a Kosovo and Serbia deal, and as part, President Trump has just announced an economic normalization deal between Serbia and Kosovo. And part of that deal is Kosovo and Israel having diplomatic normalization. You have stated that you support a two-state solution in the Middle East. Would you support more Muslim-majority countries normalizing relations with Israel, even though it may mean that the Palestinians will lose leverage in their fight towards a two-state solution?
Well, first of all, I don't know what the deal is you're referring to, okay? What I have argued relative to Serbia and Kosovo is that Kosovo should be an independent country, not a part of Serbia. I've spent a lot of time there. And so I don't know how, I assume that would reinforce that independence, but I don't know based on what's being said. I think normalization of relations among countries is by and large, in almost every instance, a good thing. To have a Muslim majority country normalizing relations with Israel in a generic sense seems positive to me, but I have to know the detail of what's happening, what's going on. And I don't know that, and you may be right, that would cause the Palestinians to lose leverage in a decision on a two-state solution.
In
I'd have to
general,
look
do
at
you
it.
support more countries recognizing Israel?
Oh, I do. Absolutely, I do. I do. And I think that's the thing, recognize Israel as an independent Jewish state. I think that's important. And, but it also, I believe, that Israel has to be prepared to work toward a genuine two-state solution. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
And that was the full Joe Biden news conference there and remarks in Delaware on this Friday. As he continues to still talk to the media here, let's listen. All right, he's wrapping up there, going to put on his mask there. You are watching News Now from Fox. Welcome everyone here to News Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thank you so much.